The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Subscribe to the First and 12 podcast. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio.
Hey everybody, let's get it going. It is First and 12 right here, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM. I'm normally on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone during the week. That's why sometimes I get the signals mixed up. Mitch Harper, he doesn't get the signals mixed up ever, but he's not in the building at the moment, and so he's in Kansas City taking in some Big 12 media days for basketball. Then he's going to round out the week going to the Iowa State game. Mitch, what's going on, man? Everything good?
Doing good, Alex. Yeah, I just got done with Big 12 basketball media day one earlier today. But what's nice, though, about football season is it still works its way into basketball media day, and you'll hear some of Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, his commentary from earlier today about college football playoff expansion and the thoughts of the Big 12 conference on that. But, yeah, Kansas City's a good time out here in the Big 12. They love the Big 12 here in KC. There's stores nearby the T-Mobile Center with Big 12 gear. The Big 12 even gave me a Big 12 hat, so
no, you're
I'm
one of the
decked out
referees
in
now.
Big 12 gear.
You're looking like one of the referees now.
Yes, I am.
We've been coveting those hats that the refs have been wearing during these Big 12 games, man. How come? Listen, I'll Venmo you. Get me a Big 12 referee hat, and that while you're there, so I can be a part of this, man. So
I'll find a way to make it happen.
All right.
I mean, that's why I had to work in a couple weeks ago on the show the New Era sponsorship,
Of course.
right? That's why I had to get that in there.
Well, we've got lots going on. First and 12, of course, is always part of our Football Tuesdays that we have ready for you. Again, you just heard Mitch Harper and Cougar Tracks the last 30 minutes, and then we're going to get you all the way up till 9 o'clock, and then you've got BYU football with Kalani Sitake. So we've got you covered top to bottom, and we've got you all over the place. When it comes to the Big 12, it's a disaster of a conference. And by that, I mean it's one of the most exciting conferences in all of the land of college football. So let's get things started off here in segment one. It is our First and 12 game of the week.
The big time Big 12 game of the week on First and 12.
Where else would we go other than the rivalry game? BYU took down Utah 24-21. BYU's third consecutive victory in this rivalry. The first time that's happened, Alex, since 1992. It's hard to believe it had been that long since BYU got three straight over the Utes, but feels like a little bit of a changing of the guard in the state where BYU is planting its flag as the top program in this state. It wasn't always pretty for BYU, but you know they were the more physical football team, and they took care of business and maintained their undefeated season. Yeah,
and you and I sit by each other in the press box, then we sit by each other down in the press room in the post game, and so what's interesting about all that is that this is actually the first time we get to really kind of get our thoughts from one another on this game, and it has to be a wild ending, right? It has to be a wild finish to these games. And I was standing in the south end zone at the very end of the game. I was actually standing by one of our Utah colleagues, Stevenson Sylvester, who does radio for the Utah side of things. I played linebacker at Utah, and I'll tell you, we're sitting down there, and it was some dicey moments for that student section after that touchdown was scored there at the end. The thing that I got out of this game, though, after everything settled and BYU ends up with their third straight win, is I think that every game we found out a little bit more about BYU as we go along here. And Utah, it's interesting because I think that we're finding out less about Utah. It's a weird dynamic because Utah's been the steady program, right? Not just in getting wins in this. I mean, Kyle Whittingham brought it up in his postgame, right? He goes, look, we've won nine of these in a row, so losing 3 of these in a row, yeah, it's a bummer, but I'm way ahead on the ledger is kind of the way he put it, right? and it's true. The guy's a legend up at Utah. But the last 3 years, Utah has not been able to sneak it past BYU. I'm not sure what it is that BYU has learned to finally kind of get over that hump because it doesn't feel as much like – it feels like BYU has snuck wins away from Utah in the past years, and that's how they've gotten it. But now it feels like they're the better team and, at least for the moment, the better program between the two schools.
Kalani's, got BYU in a great place to where they've kind of modeled their program a little bit after Utah, quite a bit actually.
Yeah.
And the physicality of BYU, I think, shined in this one. And because it's not very often in this series that BYU, would get 200 yards on the ground against Utah. And I know Utah got a lot of yards in this game, and we'll hit on that. But BYU to get 202 on the ground, rushing yards, I thought that was huge because this is what BYU is built on, their physicality and running the football offensively. That's what they want to turn to. And when you can get 200 yards consistently, even against a good defense like Utah, BYU has shown that they can win really any game in this conference because they have so much faith and so much trust in that ground attack with L.J. Martin and Bear Bachmeier. Bear had a more reasonable rush total against Utah, only 11 carries compared to the 22 he had against Arizona a few weeks back. But BYU's ground attack is for real, and I think their defense with the return of Jack Kelly back in the lineup, that was a game changer. And even Isaiah Glasgow, though he got banged up in the first half, and he didn't seem anywhere close to full strength in the second half. But having Jack out there dealing with that shoulder injury, that was a game changer, I think, for BYU, too, to have him back in the lineup. And but by all accounts, though, just BYU, they've done this, humble and hungry approach that Kalani loves, love and learn, all that. It's just working, and it seems like it's carrying over to each and every week where BYU now has won 18 of its last 20 games in a league that you feel like we can never predict week after week. BYU's becoming a predictable team, and that's something that's not very common in the Big 12.
After BYU played this very emotional game last year up at Utah, they, of course, took 2 losses in a row. That was brought up immediately after the game, of course, by Kalani Sitake. He brought that right up and said, hey, we lost this game right after this. We lost the week after. In fact, they lost the 2 weeks after because they went Kansas, and then they hosted Kansas, and that was a tough loss. And then they went to Arizona State. There was also a very emotional loss. And that essentially was their season when it came to what the postseason was going to be for them, because that wrapped up for everybody else. Well, BYU's not really ready for the college football playoff. That was arguable. But at this point now, it's interesting to see, Mitch, what BYU's going to try to do to turn around and correct the script from last year, which was massively emotional game against Utah, which it always is, and it came down to the wire like it always does. And they're going to try to figure out how to get a win this week. Going to Ames to play Iowa State is a wild way to follow that thing up, and it just is followed up again by a bye week, but more difficult schedule along the way for BYU, I think, than any other team in the Big 12. But every little test seems to be getting a little bit more difficult for Bear Bachmeier and this BYU offense that everybody was waiting to see what they'd look like, and they keep passing him. So he keeps progressing as a quarterback. Now, L.J. Martin, Bear is easy to bring up. He won his 4th Freshman of the Week honors in a row and 5th overall for the season. I think that the Big 12 at this point is like, oh, man, we just don't have that many freshmen to be able to give this award to. And I don't know, Mitch, have you asked him what he gets? Does he get like a little miniature, like it's like the old, Michael Scott, the awards that they would do in the office? Is it like a Brett Yore marquee? Every month or every week you get a little mini statue of the commissioner you put on your desk? I don't know how it works, but the guy just keeps churning it out. And somebody who we quietly talked about, even though he's one of the best running backs in the entire league, is L.J. Martin was one of those guys that was key to that victory for BYU, to keep that ground game consistent, get those those first downs, but not only that, get them into second and third and short situations. And I thought overall they had a great game plan, and their defense did just enough to be able to keep Utah without scoring as many points in that red zone. And it helped that Kyle Whittingham just kept going for it on 4th down, and they didn't convert.
I'm not sure what Bear gets for these weekly honors, but I am sure that L.J. Martin is the best running back in the Big 12. He has been outstanding for BYU this season. And I'm also sure, too, that Devin Dampier is regressing for Utah. He looked banged up in that second half.
Massively.
And you saw Ficklin in the second half, Bird Ficklin, the backup quarterback, getting a lot of running the football in that second half. But Dampier clearly did not look anywhere close to full strength. And you kind of wondered, too, if it's going back to what Utah was dealing with in that Texas Tech week where Dampier was banged up, and is this a situation where, oh no, the season is tied to the health of a quarterback, and if he's not at full strength, does this season go in the tank for Utah? Because like BYU last year, Utah also spiraled a bit after that BYU game, losing to Colorado, and then they kind of picked themselves up off the mat against UCF, but the season was lost at that point. They didn't have a bowl game to play for. So both of these teams got to fight the challenge of letdown because this game is emotionally draining. But I will say that I feel BYU creating a little bit of cushion in the fourth quarter. There were still some late heroics, obviously, and there was a field storming, but it seemed like it wasn't as late of a night as it was last year. I remember last year, guys were up until 6:30 in the morning, including even the media. There was just a late night for everyone involved, whereas this one seemed kind of more business as usual in terms of just the schedule and what happened after the game. But it was a memorable night for BYU, and I think all of Cougar fans out there, they're probably thrilled with the trajectory of the program because when you get these rivalry wins, it just kind of validates what you think you're building, and now you got to take it to a higher level and try to go chase a Big 12 title. So it was a huge win for BYU.
Yeah, Utah did mention this week that they are looking to see if Devin Dampier is going to be able to go. That'll be interesting to see what these injury reports over the rest of the week are going to give us on that one because they said, hey, Bert Ficklin, we feel really, really good about him if he does have to take over at least for a week for Devin Dampier, who, that ankle was definitely re-injured again, it looked like, in that game against BYU. Let's take our first break of the evening on 1st and 12. We'll come right back. We've got more to go right around the corner. We have our 1st and 12 headlines from a packed week, again, of a wild conference weekend in the Big 12. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry. It is 1st and 12 right here on KSL News Radio.
Read all the stories about BYU sports no one else has heard. Go to KSLSports.com for exclusive columns by BYU insider Mitch Harper. That's KSLSports.com.
It's 1st and 12 here on KSL News Radio. Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry with you. I'm coming to you from Kansas City, site of Big 12 Basketball Media Day. The women took place today. Men's basketball will take center stage tomorrow, BYU and Utah. Big storylines with those teams, with BYU basketball being a preseason top 10 team and Alex Jensen era beginning for Big 12 hoops. But that's on the hardwood. On the football side, a lot of headlines to dive into. Let's jump in with those 1st and 12 headlines.
12 headlines.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
The dozen storylines that shape this week of Big 12 football. Headline 1.
All right off the bat here, Mitch. The Big 12 has fined Arizona State $50,000 for storming the field. It's not just about the storming the field part, because BYU did it, but apparently they did it in good enough order. I don't know how it was, or they had a cookie sponsor be able to pay the fine, so they were let off a little bit easier. I don't know. I will say, if you watched any of the videos, though, it was a lot of harassment from, as Patrick Kinahan says it on the KSL Sports Zone, a little bit tipsy from the Arizona State fans. But, yeah, it was...
we need Kyle Whittingham to say to PK, what do you want, Sparky?
What do you want, Sparky boy? Yeah, I'm telling you, it was a weird moment because I don't know if I'd walk up to a 6'4", 350-pound defensive lineman and get in his face after that, but some liquid courage. That's what caused it. It wasn't just the $50,000. The Big 12 sends out a public reprimand. I always love that one too. Like, hey, everybody needs to be embarrassed who's dealing with this at Arizona State. So they get the $50,000 fine, and you can't storm the field in the Big 12. You're going to get fined for it. But that one was a little bit extra because of how spicy the students got.
It's kind of deja vu to last year for Arizona State, where they get a big win over BYU, and then they storm the field, and there's a little bit of exchanges between fans. But we did learn in headline 2, Arizona State proves they have the talent to be at the top of the league once again by taking down Texas Tech. And with Sam Levitt at quarterback, that was a completely different team once again, because we saw them in Salt Lake, and they were a mess against the Utes. And keep in mind, though, Jordan Tyson, the star wide receiver, he was battling through a hamstring injury in that game. So something to monitor this week potentially on the availability report for the Sun Devils. But they've got the talent to compete at the very top of this league once again.
Yeah, and with that loss, Texas Tech, headline 3, dropped 7 spots in the AP poll. That sends them down to 14th. I just think it's crazy. 7 spots going down after they lose to a team that's the champion from last year, an AP ranked team now, a team that is very good. And you're exactly right, Mitch. I think we talked about this. They don't get a lot of respect. The league doesn't get a lot of respect. Like, what does Texas Tech have to do to be able to? I mean, if that was an Alabama team losing that game this weekend and they took their second loss of the year, they would have gone down to maybe maybe 10 or 11, right? I mean, because it's what happens. They go, well, they're still good though, even though they take the second loss. I mean, look at Notre Dame, for example, who just continues to hang out in the top. They're right behind BYU. They're a 5-2 team. They're number 12 in the AP poll. And I was like, watch, they're going to put Notre Dame ahead of them. Luckily, the voters didn't do it, although a lot did on their voting. But it's a lot of disrespect. I think Texas Tech is better than that. They've just played a really good team in this conference.
Headline 4, I swear, since last time we did this show a week ago, Alex, there's just been a lot of press releases from the Big 12s about fines. The objects thrown on the field in a Big 12 venue could now lead to a $100,000 fine, and this is significant for Texas Tech because they have a tradition of throwing tortillas. If they do that now, it's going to, 1, be a penalty on the field, so 15 yards, but then 2, a $100,000 fine. The Big 12 wants these playing surfaces to not have anything thrown on them, and they're going to hit the wallet if they do.
Yeah, speaking of which, the alleged knife toss at Lubbock, according to the Kansas head coach Lance Leipold, proved to be inaccurate. What we call that in the business is lying, but Kansas was fined for the inaccurate reporting of what had happened, and then everybody feels a little bit embarrassed by it, but at the same time, whatever. You say some weird things while you're when you're losing games that you feel like you should be a little bit more of a part of. Headline 6, Cincinnati and BYU, just like you predicted, Mitch, are the only undefeated teams currently in Week 8 of college football. There's no way. I mean, it's crazy, but BYU, the last undefeated team in this conference, there's only 6 in all of FBS football, and BYU is one of them.
Pretty impressive. And headline 7, Houston, they clinch bowl eligibility by taking down Arizona 31-28. The Cougs up to 6 wins, 6-1 on the season.
Crazy.
No shock that Willie Fritz is building another good program under his watch. And headline 8, Noah Fafita for Arizona. He was excellent, going 24 of 26, but it wasn't enough for the Wildcats, and it begs the question, is Arizona going to nosedive again like last season? They've lost their last 2, and they seem to be reeling right now.
Yeah,
Alex.
It seems crazy because they're playing way better, and they just aren't getting the results. So a couple of heartbreakers of the last 2 weeks, and you think about the teams they've played, lots of really good teams that they've lost to in very close games as well. Headline 9, TCU gets that win against Baylor in the chaos in this league that we get every week, a 42-36 win in the Blue Bonnet matchup. What do they call it, Mitch? I can't remember. It's not the rivalry. It's the Blue Bonnet War. I don't know what it is anymore.
Gosh, yeah, it's the Blue Bonnet flower. Yeah, gosh, it's a mess. Bring back the rivalry.
Come on.
Headline 10, it was the first time in 2 years that Baylor quarterback Sawyer Robertson completed less than 50% of his passes in the loss to TCU. So Baylor goes as Sawyer Robertson will take them, but even when if he slips up at all, you know this team's going to lose because the score might seem close, that 42-36 total, but it was a decisive win, I thought, for TCU.
Headline 11, just like we put down on paper earlier before in the season, UCF puts up 578 yards against West Virginia's only 210. That's going to be the first win for Scott Frost in the Big 12 era. And Rich Rod, speaking of, that's headline number 12. Mitch, what do you make of Rich Rod in this first year? I know that they've been absolutely blasted by injuries, and so you never like to see that that's how a person has to get rolled out as the head coach of a place who's trying to get his second wind, for his second time around. But it just feels so tough right now for West Virginia. West Virginia's giving Oklahoma State a run for their money, the worst team in the conference right now. My heavens, it's not good.
That's the only thing that's saving this from being a complete failure this year is Oklahoma State, because West Virginia has been awful. They've got losses to Ohio. They have been competitive really in any Big 12 game. I mean, they're getting blown out every single week. The only game that's been close was a loss at BYU, and that was a 2-touchdown setback, 38-24. Everything else, they're giving up more than 40 points, and they're not even scoring beyond 14 points. So West Virginia, they're not even competitive. I think that's what's shocking to me. Under Rich Rod, you bring back the nostalgic vibes thinking he's going to bring competitiveness, and that hasn't been the case at all.
Wild standings, of course. You have, Mitch, something that's getting set up for an absolute disaster from a tiebreak perspective because you've got all these one-loss teams in conference play right now. Let me see here. Arizona State, Texas Tech, Houston, then Iowa State, TCU, Baylor, all with 2 losses. Kansas State also 2-2. Utah 2-2. Kansas 2-2. You have all these teams that are vying in there. Everyone feels like if you get to 2 losses, you're out. might be even more complicated than that as we try to figure this thing out across this entire conference. But we've got much more around the corner for you on First and 12 when we come back to the program. Guess what we have? Our Big 12 Sound Roundup. What are you going to hear? Kyle Whittingham, Coach Kalani Sitake, both after the game down in Provo last week. And then Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham, he's got the mojo back. That's all coming up next on First and 12 on KSL News Radio.
The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Subscribe to the First and 12 podcast. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio.
All right, everybody, welcome on in. It is First and 12 right here on a Tuesday evening with you, Alex Kirry, Mitch Harper. Alex Kirry here at our studios in Salt Lake City at KSL News Radio, and then Mitch Harper on the road in Kansas City. Big 12 Media Days for basketball happening there. And then do you just go straight to Iowa State? Is that the punishment that you got this week, Mitch? Is that what goes on here?
That is correct. I'll just go straight to Ames from there, be in the Midwest. So
do you walk? Do you walk there? Is it that close, or how do you guys get you little
about
rental car
3 hours?
Oh, you got to drive
I've been
it.
Told.
Oh,
yeah, you're gonna drive it.
Well, enjoy the view, enjoy the scenic views and of the rolling plains of Iowa. It should be very beautiful there all week long. Here, of course, we're going to get you ready for BYU versus Iowa State, but also across this entire conference, just the coaches are delivering and trying to put their elbows out for their teams and talking about how great they are or how slighted they were, whatever it might be. It's part of our Big 12 Sound Roundup. Let's get right to it.
Big 12 Sound Roundup.
Check 1, 2.
The best bites, cheap shots, and excuses from Saturday's post-game news conferences.
The buzzword for this week's Sound Roundup has to be analytics. Have you heard coaches locally say the word analytics more the past weekend, Alex, than this one? I mean, because Kyle Whittingham and even Kalani Sitake, they've been both using that word a lot lately. But Kyle Whittingham in particular, because the Utes, they took a lot of chances. They rolled the dice and went for it often on fourth down, and they got stopped on those occasions. This was Kyle Whittingham citing those analytics for why they didn't kick field goals inside the red zone against BYU.
Analytics, well inside the analytics to go, well inside, 3 yards inside the analytics. And so unless you tell me to go against the analytics, that's why.
Do you have to adjust that given the game and the matchup here?
No.
That follow-up by KSL Sports' Steve Bartle was pretty well. I mean, I thought it was a great question because it was like, hey, you know, sometimes the analytics are there. It's easy to lean on that, but this is an emotional game. And you don't want just the emotion to get into it, right? I mean, I think that's the whole point. Like, I thought it was a great follow-up because it was like, hey, listen, yeah, but this game kind of requires something. And by the way, you and I were looking at this, I think, at one point after the game where it's like, okay, where did they end those drives? BYU's 8-yard line stopped on a 4th and short. BYU's 13-yard line stopped on a 4th and short. And then, of course, they went for it at, I think, the BYU 32 when they decided not to go for that field goal, right? Or from the 27, rather. They decided, okay, we're not going to go for that field goal. They didn't trust their kicker. That's one thing. It's one thing to say, I don't trust the kicker from 45 or 46 or whatever. It's another to go, okay, at the 8, you know what that is? It's a 25-yard field goal. At the 13, you know what that is? It's a 30-yard field goal. And those should be automatic for your guys, and you got to get out of that red zone with a field goal. But he did. He leaned on this analytics thing. And look, I'm not shocked by it at all. I get to hear Kyle Whittingham every week go, well, what's his QBR? Give me what his QBR is. Yeah, look at their rushing numbers and look at where they're at compared to the rest of the – he loves breaking down the analytics, and I think it works. If you want to do the Moneyball thing, absolutely do it. But there are some things that are a little bit more of those intangibles in a game like BYU versus Utah that I think that you got to look a little bit more into. And I think that, he got caught a little flat-footed on some of those answers because I don't think just saying it was the analytics, next question is good enough for a week like this.
That's not going to work in that spot, especially, too, because, I'd have to dive into the actual data and numbers, but it just felt like in the early years of Kyle Whittingham, he would never take these chances where he was going to always go for the points and go for the field goal. And I think maybe it's a case of he's got trust in Jason Beck and he believes in this offense, and they are much more high-powered than offenses he's had in the past. But I think that's what makes this even a story, too. One, it's because the BYU game and you lose, but also old school Witt doesn't do this. Yeah. He's just taking the points, go with the field goal. But I also wonder, too, how much question there is with Dylan Curtis, because the one time we did see him, and it was, BYU blew a timeout and called it right before Curtis kicks it, and he missed it badly.
Yeah, badly.
Whittingham then has a change of heart on 4th and 7 to go with Utah's offense.
I get that one. Like, you go, our dude can't hit it from here. Like, what else am I going to do? Just
so no trust in the kicker then is what I think it could be. That's beyond analytics. It's just saying we don't trust the kicker.
Yeah, we don't trust him. But that's not the case from 25 yards. That's not the case from 30.
Yeah.
Like, those are auto, even for a guy who might be in his own head a little bit. But again, too, and then you had the Kalani side of things. It was like, hey, so tell me the thought on going for it as many times as you did. And what was his answer in the press room?
Analytics.
Wow. Well, he said
Gut
analytics,
feel.
but then he goes,
He
hey,
went
man,
for it.
I'm a fan, dude. I like going, like, it's a video game for me, man. I mean, and so there's a little bit of that. Like, which one is being more honest here? It's like, Kyle leaned on the analytics answer because that's the one where people can't really push back that much on you. You can still push back, and he'll go, yeah, but no, the analytics, I'll always go with those. And it's like, no, you won't. No, you won't until next time when you don't. And so saying that is just the excuses. That's what you got to do after a loss like that. After you make, and again, you're talking like him, you're going to talk about Kyle Whittingham like he's a hero if they get all those, right? If they go for him and they get him, it's risky, but the analytics said to go for him. We got it. Here's Kalani Sitake, by the way, after that win, talking about how they've got to handle this thing and fans have to handle this maybe a little bit differently after they've won that game over the Utes for 3 straight for BYU.
I hope that our fans would understand that, we're on a win streak right now. We know what it felt like to be on the other side of that before, and so, to show respect. I mean, you guys do anyways, the majority of our fans do, but show respect to our opponents and I just feel like it's really important for me to say that at this time, that if we're going to break the cycle in this situation where you're kind of, it's like the pride cycle that we learned from the scriptures. If anyone can break the cycle of being kind and not stepping on your opponents when they're down and try to find ways to uplift them, and just appreciate we're in the Big 12 together. It's amazing. I never thought this would ever be possible, that we're in the Big 12 together and we get to play this game and be partners with this wonderful conference.
Mitch, as always, Kalani, taking the high road. Always taking the high road, trying to be the good guy. I love it, but at the same time, like, there's part of me that kind of goes, you don't have to keep telling the fans, to be nice. I get it. It's part of their deal. He's doing the kill 'em with kindness thing, and they've got the whole humble and hungry thing, and they've got the whole, they're taking a different approach. I appreciate it. I think it's fun. Fans will take that with a grain of salt, and they'll treat the rivalry the way they always do in the future, for sure.
Part of me, though, wonders if this messaging got amplified for Kalani because of the events of last week. After we had our show last week, there was a man down in Emory County who got arrested for making threats on social media.
Yep.
That was centered around BYU and Utah. So I think Kalani kind of just used his platform to say, hey, just be kind to everyone. Please don't go say things that are going to get you arrested potentially, because that's what happened last week for a fan before the game. So, but yes, Kalani always tends to take the high road. And is there a man that loves the Big 12 more than Kalani? I love the conference. There's a lot of cool things we could do in the Big 12.
Yeah, I love Utah. I love the conference. I love Utah. I love all of our opponents. I love the coaches, the other coaches and their wives. They're great people. Yeah, all of it. Next up on our Sound Roundup, Arizona State's head coach.
He loves this guy, too.
Oh, he does, yes. No, they're friends. They're very close. They're very close in the offseason. Arizona State head coach Kenny Dillingham on how tough his quarterback, Sam Levitt, has been. He didn't play in the game against Utah last week, presumably so that he could be ready for this one. And, boy, were the Sun Devils ready for this one against Texas Tech.
That's Sam. I'm just glad he didn't play basketball this week, Because that's what people think a competitor like that does. It's disgusting. The dude's a battler. He's a competitor. He's a fighter. He wants to do everything he can to get on that field for his team. He was ready to play this week. I felt he was ready to play this week, and he played, and he fought, and he competed, and that's what Sam Levitt does.
Get that man a Mike Pop guard. Come on.
He was hitting that table hard. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, I like his attitude. I mean, there's never a press conference that Kenny Dillingham rolls out that I'm annoyed by him. I just think he knows what he wants to say and he says it. And the guy is already acting like it's a little bit of like the Mike Gundy vibe. When Mike Gundy was young and coaching at Oklahoma State, I hope that later on in his years he doesn't turn, full Mike Gundy. But I do like the way he approaches it. Just tons of passion every week. He loves his players, and it's hard not to buy in on a guy like that if you're playing for Kenny Dillingham down at ASU, man.
Kenny Dillingham has Arizona State rolling. And look, they've already lost 2 games. They lost to Utah and Mississippi State at the Final Horn. But when they've got Sam Leavitt, they are darn near unbeatable in the Big 12. And I think that's the story here with them is that they take down a Texas Tech team who was banged up, and Texas Tech had Will Hammond in the game. And I mean, honestly, I thought Will Hammond, after that Utah game, I was making an argument even on this show. Is he better than Baron Morton? So that's no excuse to me. They had some injuries in the secondary, the Red Raiders did. But, hey, everyone's banged up, including ASU. And Arizona State always finds a way to win. They are a tough out. And like BYU, they've been consistent. I think that's refreshing. And that's something when you think long-term of who are going to be the teams that can climb and consistently be those programs that every year going into a season gets the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's going to be Arizona State because what they're doing and the quality of wins they're piling up, particularly at home, it's been impressive to see from the Sun Devils.
Take a break here. We'll come back. We'll get you ready for the last segment of the first hour here. It is 1st and 12. KSL News Radio, Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry. Join us right around the corner for more talk right here of the Big 12 on 1st and 12.
Read all the stories about BYU sports no one else has heard. Go to KSLSports.com for exclusive columns by BYU insider Mitch Harper. That's KSLSports.com.
Welcome back into 1st and 12 here on this Tuesday evening. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry with you. We hold it down every Tuesday here on KSL News Radio to give you a weekly look at Big 12 football. And if you miss any part of the show, you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. So I'm coming to you from Kansas City tonight, site of the Big 12 basketball media days. And Alex, unlike football, Big 12 basketball gets a wide margin for error from the national pundits, from the talking heads. And it has a narrative, branding of being a gauntlet, a buzzsaw, the toughest conference in America. Even Brett Yormark earlier today said it's the premier basketball conference in the country. It begs the question, why does the Big 12 on the hardwood get the benefit of the doubt, but not in football? These universities and these brands and hoops, they get a lot of respect.
Well, and look, and it's not like the SEC is a slouch as a basketball conference. It's also on paper one of the best conferences. If not, they may have had the most.
It was
teams,
the best last year,
right? They might have had I think they had the most teams in the NCAA tournament last
14.
year. And I'm telling you, it's strange to me because you're talking about a conference that is housed in Texas, which is the de facto center of the football universe. I know some people in other parts of the South would argue, but it's pretty hard. I mean, it's so weird to me that that's the brand that the Big 12 still has this. We referenced in the first hour or a few minutes ago just how that, that drop 7 full spots for Texas Tech after they lost to if they would have lost to UCF, I would have been like, yeah, you got to get dinged on that. And that's probably about right. But when you lose to Arizona State, the guys who won the conference last year and came back and still have an exceptionally good team this year.
And you lost barely.
And you barely lose to them. And it was at their place. And it took like an insane comeback for them to be able to beat you. Then and you still have a ton of talent. And you're with a backup quarterback. All these things in my mind go, yeah, put them down to 10. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even think BYU necessarily should have been above Texas Tech yet at this point because I don't think their schedule's been as hard as Texas Tech. However, BYU's still undefeated. I just don't get it, Mitch, like when it comes down to it. Now, part of it is that the rest of the conference in basketball is more competitive than the rest of the football conferences. Now, you don't get dinged as much in these other conferences. The Big Ten, you tell me if this is true. How many teams are like legitimate playoff teams in the Big Ten right now? Ohio State and Indiana, and then after that, who? Maybe
Oregon.
Maybe Oregon, who's already lost to Indiana, and if they lose again, then there could be a question mark there. But I'm just saying, like in terms of for sure, Ohio State is the only one that you go punch their ticket because there's still a ton of people who don't believe in Indiana. And in the SEC, it's even more of a disaster. And everybody's looking around going, man, this is a tough schedule in the SEC. Of course it is. It's a tough schedule across college football to win every week. But when you look at the SEC, who is it then? Who is it? Because Georgia's not the juggernaut they've been. Alabama already has a loss, but they look like they're coming back. But, of course, put them at number 4 immediately, right? As soon as they start to look decent again, Notre Dame gets the benefit of the doubt, and they're not even in a conference. So there are certain brands that people just give a pass to in football, and I wonder if basketball is just one where they go, you know what? These are more on merit. The other ones are more based on tradition, it seems like. Because even the traditional conference teams in the ACC, your North Carolinas and your Dukes, if they're not playing well, like you just dismiss them. You don't go, well, they are amazing. They'll get the preseason accolades, but as soon as they don't perform, they're gone. And I wish it was the same way in football. We just tend to give the guys the benefit of the doubt. It's almost like everybody's waiting for those first college football playoff rankings to come out to just absolutely hose everybody else who's not in the SEC into the Big Ten.
It is crazy, the disparity, the gap between perception in Big 12 basketball and Big 12 football. And I think what helps in basketball is that there are analytical daily data points that people turn to, that even the NCAA selection committee uses to rank and bracket the teams. Whereas in football, it's very selective and it's kind of open-ended as to how this team is ranked. And even with the selection committee, yes, they've got a bunch of data to pour over, and it's a ton. But at the same time, it's a human element, and how do they rank them? And even in the NCAA selection committee, they've got the human element too. But again, everyone in society can see these daily rankings that are being published in college basketball to really give you a sense of where these teams are ranked and all these different metrics. And I think that helps the cause, because you look at the Big 12 going into this upcoming basketball season, you've got 6 teams in the top 20. You know, the number 1 team, including Houston. I think what's helped the Big 12 in basketball, too, is that they have had programs win it all or at least get to the final game, whereas football, no one's really come close. The last national champion from this league on the gridiron was Colorado in 1990, and that was a split title. And then before that, it's BYU in 84. And I think that's the challenge, too, that the Big 12 is fighting, is that, really in many people's lifetimes, they have not seen anyone in the Big 12 even sniff a national title. And that's got to change. And that's where getting to the playoff, getting multiple teams into that field and winning those games is really going to be the opportunity to possibly change the narrative, because until then, nothing's going to change for the Big 12 in terms of perception. Even though we watch this league and feel like it is getting better, it's crazy, it's hectic, and it's chaotic. But that's college football throughout the sport, as you noted. So I think that's the challenge in front of the Big 12. Is they've got to have someone emerge that can legitimately go contend for a national title.
How many teams in the Big 12 are in the preseason AP? I know that BYU is 8. I don't know where the rest of everybody shook out in terms
6
of
teams.
The numbers. 6 teams. What are the other conferences? Not that you ever look at those things, Mitch. I mean, maybe that'll have to be something you got to look at. But in my mind, like we look at this all the time, and 6 teams doesn't even seem like it's that much necessarily for a preseason. But again, the preseason is crazy in basketball because you could lose 3 or 4 times and you'll stay in the top 25.
It's tied with the SEC, who also has 6.
Yeah, and again, like I said, the rankings are different. They're just different. You know, a team loses at the front end of the year, they don't get dinged nearly as much and nearly as many spots. And part of it is because they play so many games. The other part is that basketball has a longer schedule, and going undefeated really is not a thing that people think you need to do. College football, we still get stuck on this undefeated or one-loss kind of deal. And then you think that, their season's over if they lose 2 games. And unfortunately, in the world of the college football playoff, the way that it is now, that's kind of the way it works. You know, you lose 2 games. That's why everybody right now, as soon as Utah lost that second game, as soon as people look and see that Iowa State had lost their second game in conference play, they went, well, the end of your season. And that's not necessarily the case, because the teams who played for the title last year were both 2 losses, but it does feel like you have to be in that one loss category or even better to be able to be a conference champion this year in the Big 12. And so lots of work to do still, but you're right. If you win, then nobody can argue with you going forward. If you win, and if national titles start coming, if you start making yourself a powerhouse in that sense, that you're always in the conversation, then people cannot ignore where you're at. All right, our second hour of First and 12 is coming up around the corner. When we get back, we've got our weekly Big 12 power rankings. There are going to be actual fights happening on the air this year. We're going to do it over the air because I've got some beef with Mitch. So we'll come back. We got more to go. Big 12 power rankings next right here on 102.7 FM, 1160 AM.